Imagine not being able to read the paper because your hands were shaking. Imagine not being able to read newsprint as your world faded to black. The National Federation of the Blind, Newsline, Indiana. With your host, Lee Martin, and co-host, Florence Myers-McSwine.
Good morning and welcome to this week's National Federation of the Blind, Newsline, Indiana. We have a very interesting guest today, Mr. Alex Gilland. And Alex, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Well, Alex, we just want to say there's so much to cover with the information that you have. And I'm sure that we'll have to have you come back at a different point in time as well. And we look forward to it. So today, we're just going to talk a little bit about you and get some good information from you. You have so much to share to our society, and we really want to get off into that. So first of all, we want to talk about what are you doing with your life professionally right now? Let's get into your profession real quick. What is your job title and what are you doing?
So I am a vocational rehabilitation counselor down here in Clarksville, Indiana. I'm actually speaking to you from the Clarksville VR office at the moment. And I am a general caseload VR counselor for Clark County. And at the moment, I have a caseload of 48 participants, and that's only going to continue to grow.
Okay. And Alex, now how long have you been in that position, sir?
I've been in this position just over 5 months, and I got the position as a result of internships through the Gregory S. Farabach Center at Eskenazi Health.
Oh, so you're familiar with Mr. Carlos E. Taylor.
I sure am.
Great gentleman.
In fact, oh yes. In fact, he was a big help to me when I attended Ball State University. He kind of helped show me around the campus. And so a few years ago, another great gentleman, Larry Markle, who had jumped from Ball State to become the director of the Eskenazi Health, of course, the program I just described, he asked Carlos to join in, and he sure did. So it's great having both of them for this particular program because it all kind of started with Ball State, and it's just continued to grow in about the 8 years that they've done it to include the entire state.
Well, this is a great time to have job positionings for people with disabilities, people that are blind, you know, as we celebrate Blindness Equality Achievement Month in the National Federation of the Blind. And we're going to talk a little bit about a young Alex Gilland, and we want to find out, you know, just how life was for you as a young person, as a young man. So you want to share a little bit about that with us?
Sure. Well, over 30 years ago, I guess it would have been hard to imagine a young Alex Gilland being where I am today. I was born and raised in a small town in southeastern Indiana, Osgood, Indiana. And my parents didn't really have many role models, if anything, or any resources to go on for how to deal with a blind child. And in our family, I am the youngest of four, and two of my other siblings and myself have an eye condition called Femeo extradata visual retinopathy. I know that's a mouthful. But basically, with each child comes decreased eyesight. So my oldest brother, it was just something to kind of look at and monitor, but not really something that was going to turn into something long term. So then with my next brother and myself, we had to have some eye operations. We went everywhere the first couple of years. Of course, I don't remember any of it, but we went anywhere and everywhere from Duke to Michigan to wherever. And basically what I'm able to see as a result is just close up light. But growing up, at first, I went to the Indiana School for the Blind and Visually Impaired. And it was kind of first thought that I was going to be one of those students, good student, but probably wouldn't be able to, graduate with a diploma or anything. So I was kept in the ungraded track for a while. I didn't get fully into graded classes until I was in high school, but I tried to be as much part of everything as I could. I grew up playing sports. I really loved sports. I wrestled briefly when Mr. Booker, Darnell Booker, was my coach. And then what I stuck to doing was track, swimming, and the public speaking team, otherwise known as forensics. And so I did a lot of things growing up, and I was able to make a lot of friends, and I ended up getting my high school diploma in 2010.
Awesome. Now, it sounds like you've had some pretty good support, Alex.
I have, and I'm very blessed and grateful to have the family and friends that I do. And so, I wouldn't say with my friends, I think I would say I have a lot of friends, but I think there's few friends that I would maybe talk to in situations of importance and whatnot that are really important. But I think if it really came down to it, I would have a lot of support from many different areas. And that it goes back to, when I was a child, my parents stuck up for me in the school situation, saying, hey, he's going to take the I-STEP test. That, it's the law for him to take the I-STEP test. You're not going to tell him he shouldn't take it. And they really vouched for me to get, regular schooling and regular classes. Of course, I learned Braille and everything, but it was just, it looked like I was going on a different track for a while. And then throughout my life, whether it would be the blind school with wonderful teachers that I had there, and then through the Louisiana Center for the Blind and Ball State, and now with my work as well as the NFB, I am proud to say I have a nice support network. And I would also consider myself very lucky to have come upon the people in my life that I have. Just it's crazy to think that it seems like someone comes in my life right at the time I kind of need them. So I would say for me, the support system has served me well. I would say I'm not the most skilled person at some things, but I really feel like through my relationships and the support system, I really feel like that has been and played a large role in my development, growth and development, and where I've been able to go and where I'm hopeful to continue.
And I'm sure that with all the support that you've had and all the support that you're going to provide, that everyone wins. So we're going to take us a short pause, and we're going to come back with Mr. Alex Gilland with the National Federation of the Blind as well as with the vocational rehabilitation services. So stay tuned.
I just graduated college as a blind student. How can I independently find job listings?
Thanks to the National Federation of the Blind, visually impaired Hoosiers can hear newspapers, circulars, and magazines from across the globe.
It is a fantastic service.
Learn more by calling 855-963-6476 or visit nfbnewsline-in.org.
We are the nation's blind, and we read NFB Newsline.
Welcome back to this segment of the National Federation of the Blind Newsline Indiana, and we're speaking with Mr. Alex Gilland. And Alex, let's talk more about your road to employment, and that being the road to internship through Ball State, correct?
Yes.
All right, well, let's talk a little bit more about that.
Okay. So I was fortunate when I was going to Ball State University that our disabilities department, our disabilities program was really starting to make some headway with a well-respected attorney in Indianapolis who also was a Ball State alum and I think still teaches a course every fall. His name's Greg Farabach. And so we were able to get connected to Eskenazi Health there. And when you hear that, you think, well, what would I be interning in a hospital for? Well, what they try to do there through the internship program is, and by the way, it's for college students with physical disabilities. So they try to give you an internship through a department that's closely related to your major. And so on multiple occasions, and I needed every bit of it to get where I'm at now, but I was able to have internships at Eskenazi Health, whether it would be the public affairs department or one internship I did through palliative care. And then my VR internships, which landed me here, I was able to, take part in those internships. And it's hopeful that that will help you get ready for a job. They really try to prepare you for that. They make you go through writing a cover letter, preparing a resume. They put you through an interview, try to gather some letters of recommendation. And so that way you're prepared after the internship ends to do everything by yourself as much as you can. And just a lot of great resources there. At one point, I really wasn't sure where things were going. I had some internships at Eskenazi Health, but I really wasn't sure if I wanted to do full-time employment or go back to school. So I decided, you know what, I'll go back to school for grad school. And I went back to Ball State, and I was in the communication studies program, wonderful program. And I was briefly we call it a Com 210 instructor, but basically you teach the public speaking course. You're one of many instructors who do that. And I experienced some problems there, not with anybody in particular, but just sort of the fast-paced nature of it. And I just wasn't really ready to deal with that. And when I finally decided to step away from that, it was the middle of the first semester, which was really hard on me because I'm a believer in you finish something you start. And so I just got too overwhelmed. And so eventually, after a year of that, and COVID had started the following semester, and I was still in school, I decided to give the internship program a try again. And that's when I went to VR. And so I interned at both the Kessler office and the Clarksville office. And I learned as much about the profession as anyone would be expected to learn as a VR counselor. I was doing case note documentation. I was helping to prepare for intakes. I was not really doing authorizations at the time. I couldn't really do that, but they gave me as much as I could really handle, if not more. And I'm someone who learns best through repetition. And so the more exposure I got to something that I would be doing, the better and more confident I felt about it. And thankfully that helped me get into this job, especially when it came to my adaptive technology at work, because if not for those internships, I would have probably been in some trouble early on because I didn't get my accommodations till 3 months into the job.
Well, you have a wealth of experience there as a student and going into transitioning into the workforce. And, you're to be commended for your due diligence. A lot of people, a lot of students need to understand that you still have to persevere to overcome, to be successful. So we're going to take a short pause and come back with the next segment with you. And we're going to talk a little bit more about Alex Gilland and some of his trials to triumphs. So stay tuned.
If you or someone you know is visually impaired or print challenged, the National Federation of the Blind has a resource you need.
I use NFB Newsline when reading Hammond Northwest Times.
Using NFB Newsline, I read the Christian Science magazine.
Dad, you read Jerusalem Post too.
Learn more by calling 855-963-6476 or visit nfbnewsline-in.org.
Live the life you want. Read NFB Newsline.
It's free.
Welcome back to this segment of the National Federation of the Blind Newsline Indiana. And Alex, in your transition into employment, where did you face any barriers, and if so, what were they?
I did. So after graduating from Ball State, even though I was doing internships, I was hopeful that maybe one of the first couple internships would lead me maybe into doing a job at Eskenazi, where I could do that while also maybe trying to pursue a master's level degree, because I knew that they would help pay for some of that stuff through some incentives that they had. But it didn't really happen. And there was a situation where I was going to do an internship with the, believe it or not, the Indiana Pacers. Larry Markle and a few others really tried to set it up, and it seemed like a sure thing. But it was one of those deals where Larry told me in January that, hey, we're really looking forward to this spring internship possibility for you, because we think we might have something with the Pacers. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to get my hopes too high. So then next thing you know, time passes. I stay in communication with Larry and whatnot. And, he just said, okay, let's just stay with it. Surely they'll contact you. And so this was told to me back in January. I didn't get a notification from Pacer Sports and Entertainment until about March. And so by that point, that really limited the opportunities I was going to have, because that was going to be a seasonal situation. And so they pretty much told me, well, we're kind of running out of time in the Pacer season, but you could help with the fever. And I said, well, anything I can have to kind of get my feet wet. So finally I had a talk with them, And I started preparing like I was going to be going back up to Indianapolis, although I was going to have to figure out the housing situation on my own. Well, time kept going by, and finally I emailed them and said, hey, where do we stand? We just had this interview here at the start of April. What's going on? I thought I was going to hear back by now. So I kid you not, on Good Friday, I got notification that I wasn't going to be doing that internship. And so I was a bit deflated about that because I really at heart wanted to do something with sports. And that was kind of my last gasp effort, you might say. But, it's just one of those things. Someone told me that the NBA and teams are kind of like that. It's really hard to kind of get your foot in the door. But like I could tell, it just seemed like as the process moved on, that they probably were not going to give me much of a chance based on their responses and their lack thereof. So, that's when I did another internship. And then I went back to grad school, not back to, but I went to grad school and experienced some barriers with the program, not with anybody, but it was just the deadlines and the timelines to meet for getting things graded. And I felt like I was having to go above and beyond what anyone else was doing, just to, compete on some sort of level playing field with the rest of them. And so I had to kind of call it good there. And so I was really deflated there for a while in terms of what I was going to do, to a point where I wondered what I could do. I was at a crossroads when COVID hit. I actually started applying for sort of jobs you might call like underemployment for someone that has a degree, because I didn't want to go back to Osgood because I knew there was nothing there to apply for. And finally, that's when Carlos and Larry intervened again and said, well, we know you talked about VR. Do you want to give this another shot? And I said, you know what? I'm not really doing much of anything else right now, so why not? And so I did. And my first internship at the ND office, I made a lot of great connections that I still stay in touch with. But the problem was kind of like with the technology and getting access to the case management system, that took a while. And I got a little discouraged that when with like few weeks left in that internship, what am I going to do? So that's why I went back for another internship. And luckily, it was going to originally be Indy, but I worked a little bit with VR's leadership team, and the Region 5 manager down south, Michelle Schaefer, told my current supervisor, Ima Abbott, about me. And so they just said, why don't you come down to Clarksville? And if we think you're a good fit and you like it, we'll hold the VRC position for you. And so I knew things were paying off for my first internship, but it didn't take me till I moved to Clarksville to see that it actually was. And when we had our most recent BVI training, well, I guess it wasn't BVI training, but new orientation training, I could see that everything I was doing was paying off, because I knew a lot of what we were going through already. And that's not normal for me, because normally I'm the one that's holding the group up. So I'm really glad to be where I'm at. I feel like you are approached a lot differently when you are employed, because everyone asks you how you're doing. But on the contrary, it's the opposite when you're not employed, because I don't know, like you feel kind of judged when someone asks you, what are you doing? Like, why are you not doing something? What's your problem? Are you lazy? So my anxiety would creep up whenever I wasn't employed, based on maybe the perception that maybe I thought others had of me. and that I wasn't really living up to a high standard. And so at this time, I would just like to thank all of those, my family, friends, and so many others who stuck with me through this process. And you'll be rewarded for it. I promise that. And I'm looking forward to helping others go through what I went through, and hopefully they won't have to go to it or go through it to the extent that I did.
I'll tell you what, Alex, it's great to hear how you have pursued and persevered over the times. And I'm more than certain that you will be able to share that with so many others that will come your way, and they will benefit from that. So we're going to take a short pause and come back with the conclusion of our show with Mr. Alex Gilland. Stay tuned.
The National Federation of the Blind knows that blindness is not the characteristic that defines you or your future. Every day we raise the expectations of blind people because low expectations create obstacles between blind people and our dreams. You can live the life you want. Blindness is not what holds you back.
Welcome back to the conclusion of our show. Alex, do you have any words to leave for our viewing audience today?
Well, in the words of a former ISBBI teacher who passed away a long time ago, can't is not an option. And that might not mean you get what you want right now, but if you keep pursuing what it is that you do, eventually you're going to find success. And whatever it is, if you go through an internship program, and if they ask you to do something that you're not sure how to do it, don't say you can't. At least try it, because you never know where it's going to lead. Because the worst thing they can say is, that wasn't that great, but you know what? You learned something. And that learning is what's going to help you moving forward.
All right. Well, thank you so very much, Alex Gilland, for joining us on the National Federation of the Blind, Indiana. And we look forward to joining our viewing and listening audience next week. Take good care, everybody, and stay safe. Stay very safe.
The National Federation of the Blind, Newsline, Indiana. For more information, go to nfb-in.org or call 855-963-6476. That's 855-963-6476. The National Federation of the Blind encourages you to live the life you want.